This isn't meant to sound as condescending as it probably does, but most people just won't get what Dark Void Zero is. It's a shame that that fact, coupled with the fact that this is merchandise/marketing for what is by most accounts a very mediocre game, means that not many people will play it, and fewer still will appreciate what it's actually doing. And it's a particular shame, as DBZ is a pretty impressive achievement both as a game in its own right, and as a piece of progressive, creative marketing. I haven't played the original Dark Void, so I can't tell you just how well DBZ plays off of its parent game, but I get the impression that this game is intended more for people who haven't played Dark Void than for those who have, and that its ultimate goal is to make you go on to buy Dark Void. It has an air of marketing to it, but rather than some cheap plastic junk that falls apart 2 minutes after you get it out of the box, this is actually a very solid and worthwhile product. The most appealing, and I suspect polarising, aspect of this game is that it's styled as a NES game, meaning it looks, sounds, and, barring a few tweaks, plays just like an 8-bit title. In fact, the game is styled as a lost NES game of yesteryear that has recently been rediscovered, and Capcom has not just created a story for the game, but a story about the game and its history. The fact that people online are insisting that this really is a lost game, assuming these guys aren't Capcom plants, is testament to just how convincing an act this is. But anyway, the actual game. It's obviously 2D and has platforming and gun combat, two common staples of the NES era. The game is naturally very light on story, with what little there is told at the beginning and end of the game through simple animated images and blippy sound effects. A bunch of smelly aliens have shown up, and they want our planet. You're the Baron, and your advisor, Nikolai Tesla, is the brains, and together you go off to save humanity. That's the entire story. You begin armed with nothing but your trusty sidearm. A quick glance at the HUD shows a points meter, a health bar, and holy what the fuck is this shit, how many lives you have. You have limited lives, which, combined with the fact that there's no mid-mission saving, means this game actually requires some small degree of skill, which will probably come as a shock for some. But you do have a health bar, meaning you won't die instantly when touching enemies, which was not uncommon in the NES era. And there are life hearts dotted around, so unless your fingers are on upside down, you probably won't see a game over screen on normal difficulty. The game by and large plays like a fairly standard platformer, albeit with the exception that each level features backtracking as you collect keys to access new areas, supported by a map system, which is something that basically didn't exist back then outside of Metroid. There's a fair bit of backtracking as new areas are unlocked as you collect these keys, but don't expect to pick up any new abilities that alter gameplay. This is definitely not a Metroidvania game. A few minutes in, you pick up the defining aspect of the gameplay, the jetpack. You can toggle the jetpack on and off at will, with a double tap of the jump button, which puts you into hover mode. Again, in keeping with the NES style, this is a 2-button game, while holding jump will make you rocket straight up into the air. While in hover mode you can move in any direction, but your movement is fairly slow and awkward, so dodging those enemy projectiles can get pretty hard, but you'll soon learn how to deal with each enemy and its unique styles of attack. The jetpack is a novel addition to the 2D platformer, and it's by far the most fun part of the game. The developers wisely chose not to implement any kind of fuel system, so you can fly about as much as you like, but you will find disruptor fields that destroy your jetpack, forcing you to hoof it through some areas until you can pick up a replacement. A fair bit of the level design follows this principle as, for instance, certain weapons are placed at choke points, leaving you no choice but to pick them up. And as you can only carry one weapon at a time, this is the developer's way of forcing you to use particular weapons in particular areas. There are a bunch of weapons in the game, from the rocket launcher that can blast open stone walls, to an energy weapon that is capable of firing through solid matter, to a super powerful, rapid-firing weapon that is prone to overheating. And these weapons are so precious that you won't want to let them go. It's a pleasure to play a game that has things valuable to you, that you're forced to lose after enjoying for a while. Games today so rarely make players experience that. There are a bunch of classic, authentic feeling power-ups that round things out, from things like the energy shield to the triple shot. These pickups don't exactly add much to the gameplay, as most tend to only last a few seconds, but they do add an element of authenticity to the game, and you can expect to cheer out loud when you stumble across the 1-up hidden somewhere in each level. There are only 3 levels in the game, with a boss at the end of each. Probably the single most disappointing aspect of the game is that all 3 bosses are the same, only progressively harder with each level. Not only do they look and fight the same way, they're killed in the same way. But this is the game's only serious drawback, and while it does come off as lazy, it doesn't make the NES style any less convincing. It took me around 2 hours to get through it on normal difficulty. This is an extremely short game, but it's also very cheap, and pound for pound, you will actually find that you're getting more hours of gameplay out of this game than most typical modern games. If you like, you can compete in the online leaderboards, your score increasing as you collect orbs dotted around the map, as you kill enemies, as you manage to not die, as you complete optional, simple secondary missions that amount to collecting items or killing enemies, and as you meet a few other criteria. This adds a lot of replay value for competitive players, as do the game's 30 achievements, if you're into that sort of thing. I won't critique the graphics or music, except to say that they're authentic and convincing in the extreme. I didn't enjoy them as much as some other recent retro-styled games, as the 8-bit era holds no particularly special place in my heart, but its charms are clear for those who do care. Creating a NES-style game is a lot harder than it sounds. It's not a matter of simple emulation, as while creating a game that looks and sounds like a NES game is a relatively simple feat, making a game that plays and feels like a game of 20 years ago, to such an extent that it's truly believable that this really could be a lost game of yesteryear, is genuinely impressive. And this is really the aspect that will most justify the purchase of the game. There are things to like about Dark Void Zero, other than that, but this game is really just for people who want to enjoy some cool, authentic feeling retro fun. If measuring console power in bits leaves you scratching your head, this probably isn't a game you'll appreciate.